Welcome to the deep dive. We got a lot of requests to really get into how groups can push people into doing things they wouldn't normally do, like even things that go against their own nature. So we're going to use this book, The Laws of Human Nature by Robert Greene.
Oh yeah, Green's approach is really cool. He uses a historical event, China's Cultural Revolution, as a way to look at these like timeless laws of human nature. It makes it real, like how this stuff plays out in a really intense way.
Yeah, okay. So for those of us who maybe slept through history class, can you remind us what exactly was the Cultural Revolution?
Yeah, so basically the Cultural Revolution lasted from 1966 to 1976. And it was a time of huge upheaval in China, started by Mao Zedong. Mao wanted to really solidify his power, and to get rid of what he saw as like impure elements of Chinese society. Anyone who didn't totally agree with his communist ideology.
So it was about more than just politics, huh? It sounds like he was trying to change, like, human nature itself.
Yeah, exactly. He thought he could make a new socialist citizen, someone completely devoted to the revolution. And he thought he could do that by wiping out old habits, hierarchies, even respect for authority.
Wow. I mean, that's a pretty bold idea. It's also a little scary when you think about it.
Yeah. And to really help us understand all this, Green focuses on a case study, right? The Yuzhen Middle School.
Oh, yeah.
He uses the Yuzhen Middle School, which is sometimes called YMS, like a microcosm, showing what was going on in all of China.
Okay, so this school, YMS, is like a zoomed-in view of how these big ideas actually played out in real people's lives.
Exactly. It shows how, all this chaos from the Cultural Revolution and Mao's ideas like filtered down into this regular school,
Yeah.
turning students against teachers, friends against friends, and just warping their sense of what was real.
So let's step into this world of YMS. What was it like for these students when the Cultural Revolution hit?
Okay, so imagine you're going to school one day, right? And instead of going to class, you're told that the revolution has started. And it's your job as a student to find the counter-revolutionaries among your teachers.
Whoa,
Yeah.
that is that is a lot for a teenager to deal with, you
Yeah,
know?
it is. I can't even imagine.
Right, and it started small, like just questioning teachers who didn't really praise Mao enough,
Yeah.
or like looking at their lessons to find anything that sounded bourgeois, you know? And then this suspicion, it turned into like outright accusations, fueled by this need to conform and prove how loyal they were to Mao.
So these kids are being told to basically betray the people they used to respect.
That's it. And here's where we see what you wanted to talk about, the downward pull.
Yeah.
Green uses this phrase to describe how groups push for conformity,
Right.
and that can lead to people being irrational,
Yeah.
and sadly, even cruel.
So even if the students had doubts, this pressure to fit in, to prove they were loyal, that was just too strong to ignore, huh? Exactly. And the thing is, what's so interesting here is that Green shows us, through this case study, that it's the same things that made those students turn on their teachers. Those same dynamics are happening in groups today,
Right.
though maybe in more subtle ways.
Okay. So back at YMS, what actually happened? I mean, did these accusations against teachers have real consequences?
Oh, yeah, definitely. In the beginning, it was public humiliation,
Right.
like dunce caps and making teachers confess to things. But it got much worse. It turned into these struggle sessions, and the teachers were verbally and physically abused until they, like, broke down.
That's awful. And this was just kids doing this to their teachers.
Yeah. And this is where it gets even crazier. The students, because Mao had empowered them, and they felt like they had authority now, they started forming these rival groups, like
Wow.
mirroring what was going on in all of China during the Cultural Revolution.
So this whole thing wasn't just about getting rid of so-called impure people anymore. It became a power struggle within the school itself, huh?
Yes. And these power struggles, they really highlight the dangers of this downward pull we're talking about.
Okay.
As these groups fought for power, they forgot any of the ideas or principles they started with.
Yeah.
It was about survival, belonging to the winning side,
No matter what.
no matter the cost. Yeah.
Wow. So it wasn't about ideology anymore. It was about who was in control.
Yeah, exactly. The original goals of the Cultural Revolution were totally lost. I mean, the need to belong, to feel like you're part of a group, especially when there's like an enemy, right?
Yeah.
That need overshadowed any sense of morality or, individual conscience.
And this is where we meet these key players, right?
Right.
Jianhua, the main character in that book, Born Red, and his friend, Fengku.
Yeah, Jianhua and Fengpu, they're like perfect examples of these forces. Jianhua starts out as a quiet student, likes to read, but he gets caught up in it all,
Yeah.
torn between what he thinks is right and the pressure to go along with the group. Fangpu, though, he totally embraces the revolution. He gets more and more ambitious, even ruthless. He wants to be powerful in the school.
So they're like two different sides of the same coin, right?
That's a good way to put it. Jianhua, even though he has his doubts, he goes along with it. He joins the Red Rebels. They're a faction that pops up to oppose Fangpu's group. The East is Red Corps.
Okay, so now we have our two tribes, huh? This can't end well.
No, not at all. This rivalry between the two factions, it just explodes, right? The violence escalates. And things at YMS spin totally out of control. The original ideals of the revolution are gone. It becomes just a brutal fight for power within the school.
And Jianhua and his friends are stuck in the middle of all this, huh?
They are, and what happens to them shows just how dangerous it is to give in to that downward pull of the group. In the next part of our deep dive, we'll see how this pressure to conform, this need to belong, can lead people to do things they would never do on their own, and that can have really bad consequences.
I'm ready for that. Let's get into how this all works, on an individual level in the next part of our deep dive. So we've seen this downward pull play out, in this extreme situation, the Cultural Revolution.
Yeah.
But Green says that these same forces, they're at work in our everyday lives too, even in like normal groups.
Oh, absolutely. And to really get how we can be more aware, more conscious, in groups, Green breaks down 4 main effects groups have on people.
Okay. Give me the rundown.
All right. The first one is the most basic, maybe the most universal,
Okay.
the desire to fit in.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. We're social creatures.
Right.
Like, we want to be accepted.
Yeah.
We want to feel like we belong. But how does that actually change how we act in groups?
Well, it starts with appearances, clothes, how you do your hair, even body language.
Okay.
We kind of adapt to the group's norms without thinking about it.
Well-
Think about when you start a new job.
Yeah.
You immediately watch how your colleagues dress, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And then try to, fit in.
Totally. You don't want to be the one who looks completely different.
Exactly. But it's more than just clothes or whatever. This need to fit in, it also shapes what we believe, even our values, We might not say what we really think if it doesn't match the group's opinion, or even unconsciously, start thinking like the rest of the group.
So even if we have our own opinions, we might just keep quiet so we don't cause problems.
Yeah. And that connects to the second effect. Green calls it the need to perform.
Okay, so it's not just about fitting in, but putting on a show for the group too.
Exactly. When we're in a group, we're all kind of playing a role,
Yep.
We might over-exaggerate how much we agreed, not talk about any doubts, just present ourselves, in the best possible light.
So we're always trying to impress the other tribe members, even if we're not aware of it.
That's a great way to put it. And this need to perform, along with the desire to fit in, it creates this cycle, The more insecure we feel, the more we feel like we don't belong, the more exaggerated that performance gets.
And I bet that constant pressure to perform, that it gets pretty tiring.
It really can. And this leads to the third effect. Green talks about emotional contagion.
Oh, okay.
We pick up on the moods and emotions of people around us. I mean, this is natural, right?
Yeah.
How even important for survival.
Right.
Think about how fast fear spreads through a group when they think there's danger.
Yeah, if one person starts to panic, then everyone panics.
Exactly. But in normal groups, everyday situations, this emotional contagion, it can have bad results.
Okay.
One person in a bad mood can bring the whole team down. Or if everyone's anxious, it can lead to really dumb decisions.
So we're like these emotional sponges, just
Yeah.
absorbing the feelings of everyone around us, even if those feelings don't make sense.
Exactly. And that takes us to the fourth effect Green talks about, hypercertainty.
Hypercertainty. Okay, so what does that even mean?
So it's this thing where, as individuals, we might have doubts about something.
But when we're in a group that's already made up its mind, we get this feeling of confidence,
Yeah.
even if that confidence isn't based on anything real.
So the group's belief just becomes our belief, even if there's no real evidence for it.
Yeah, this pressure to go along with everyone mixed with the emotional contagion, it creates this dangerous feeling of being sure.
And that can lead to some bad choices, right?
Absolutely.
Especially if the group is headed in the wrong direction.
Oh, yeah. Think about stuff like financial bubbles,
Right.
or wars that shouldn't have happened.
Uh-huh.
Groups of smart people making really bad choices because they all felt so sure about things, and it turned out they were wrong.
Wow. So Green's argument is that these 4 effects, the fitting in, the performing, the emotional contagion and the hypercertainty, that they all combine to make this downward pull.
Yes.
And that can make us act in ways we wouldn't if we were alone.
Huh. Exactly.
Yeah.
The key here is that when we understand these effects, we can start to, develop this awareness.
To resist that pull, to question what we think we know, and to stay, rational, even when we're in a group.
That makes a lot of sense. So now we understand how these group dynamics affect us as individuals.
Yes.
But Green also talks about these specific patterns that groups fall into, right? Like the group court idea. That sounded really interesting.
He does, and learning about those patterns can be really helpful for navigating groups.
Okay, I'm ready to go deeper into this. Let's unpack those group dynamics and see how they connect to that YMS example.
Okay.
And more importantly, how they show up in our own lives.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so we've learned about how groups can have this downward pull on us. And you've explained how that affects us, on a personal level. But now let's get into the structure of groups. Green talks about this idea of group culture.
Yeah, every group, whether it's a company or a team or even just a friend group, they all develop their own unique culture, right? It's like a set of shared values, beliefs, and how they do things. It's like the personality of the group.
Okay, so different groups have different vibes. Some are formal, some are chill, some are all about competition, some are all about, working together.
Yeah, and this culture, it really influences how people act in the group, right? Think back to that YMS case study during the Cultural Revolution. That school under Fang Pu developed this culture of fear and paranoia and absolute loyalty to Mao.
Right. That culture basically forced students to conform, even if they had doubts.
Exactly. That's why getting a group's culture is so important. It helps you understand the rules, the expectations, the stuff that's not written down.
So how do we figure out a group's culture? What should we look for?
Well, pay attention to the overall mood. Is it formal, informal, hierarchical, or flat?
Okay.
What do they say their ideals are, Do they actually live up to them? Often, a group's culture, it reflects the personality of the leader, right?
Yeah, like we saw with Fang Pu.
Yeah.
Makes
Excellent.
sense. So we've got the culture. What else should we be noticing?
Okay, the next thing is what Green calls group rules and codes. It's like these unwritten rules of conduct that tell you how to act.
Huh.
And it can be anything. How you dress, how you talk, what topics are off limits.
Like the unwritten rules of the game.
Yeah. You learn them by watching, not by reading some manual.
Right.
Yeah. You see how people act, who has the power, and what behaviors get rewarded or punished. Break these codes, even accidentally, and there can be consequences.
It's like a social minefield.
Yeah.
You got to be careful.
Exactly. And once you understand these codes, you can move through the group better, avoid conflict, and, increase your chances of success.
Okay. So group culture and rules. That sets the stage. But I'm really curious about this group court dynamic Green talks about. It sounds like, something out of Shakespeare.
It does, doesn't it? Green compares it to these old historical courts where
Yeah.
everyone's trying to win the favor of the king or queen, right?
Right.
Every group has someone with power, right?
Right.
A CEO, a team leader, even like a popular influencer.
Right.
And the stuff that goes on around that leader, it often lives like a court.
It's all about power and who's in control, huh?
Yeah. Green talks about different types of courtiers. Each one has their own way of getting the leader to like them. And this is about human nature, right?
Yeah.
These patterns, they happen in all sorts of groups.
Okay, so who are these courtier types? Fill me in.
Okay, so first you got the intriguer, always scheming, trying to get more power,
Okay.
like Frank Underwood in House of Cards,
Yeah.
working behind the scenes.
Okay. Then there's the stirrer, right? The one who loves to cause drama.
Oh, yeah. Everyone knows a stirrer.
Yeah,
They gossip, they turn people against each other. Conflict is their thing.
totally. And then you have the gatekeeper, the one who controls who gets to talk to the leader, right?
Yeah. They have a lot of power. They decide who gets the leader's attention and who gets ignored.
That's a lot of power.
It is. And then there's the enabler, the one who feeds the leader's ego, encourages their worst tendencies.
So they might not be the ones making the decisions, but they're influencing the decision maker, huh?
Exactly. And that can be a really bad thing. Green talks about Lavrenti Beria, who worked for Stalin. He was a classic enabler. He encouraged Stalin's paranoia and cruelty.
Wow, that's a scary example.
It is. And then we have the court jester. They might seem like they're challenging the leader, but they're really not. It's all for show. They're there to make the leader look good,
Like they're tolerant of different opinions?
Exactly. Then there's the mirrorer. They're good at like reflecting back whatever the leader thinks and feels, so the leader feels validated, understood.
It's like they're playing to the leader's ego, making them think they're always right.
That's it. And finally, you have the favorite and the punching bag.
Like,
The favorite gets all the leader's attention. The punching bag, well, they're the target, the one everyone takes their frustrations out on.
so it's like this whole little world built around the leader, right?
Yeah.
With all these people fighting for position and influence.
That's a great way to see it. Green's point is once you recognize these types, understand what they want, you can handle group situations better.
It's like you get this
How you want to play.
That's a really powerful insight. So we've got the culture, the rules, the court dynamic. Anything else we need to know about?
Green also talks about the group enemy.
Oh, yeah, right. We talked about how groups break into factions.
Mhm.
Is the enemy just another name for a rival group?
Sometimes. But often it's more than that. Groups, it's almost like they instinctively need an enemy, someone to define themselves against.
Yeah.
It could be a rival company or someone with different political views. It could even be just like an idea, like the establishment.
So it's all about us versus them, making the group feel stronger by having someone to oppose.
Yeah, and leaders can use that. They can use fear of the enemy to control the group, to justify things that are maybe not okay.
Yeah, makes sense.
It happens in politics all the time, but it can happen in everyday conflicts too.
Right, so it's like a tactic.
Yes. Green says we need to be aware of this. Ask ourselves, is this enemy really a threat? And not let the group's fear and anger control us.
That's a good point. So we've got culture, rules, the court, the enemy. Anything else?
One last thing, group factions.
Yeah, we saw that in the YMS story with the East is Red Corps and the Red Rebels.
Right.
Seems like factions are just going to happen,
Often, yeah. As groups get bigger, people can feel less connected, so they form these little subgroups where they have more in common.
Like they need a smaller tribe within the bigger tribe.
Exactly. And factions can be good or bad. They can be good for specialization, different viewpoints, but they can also cause infighting.
Right, so the group's energy is wasted fighting itself instead of working together.
That's it. And leaders can take advantage of that, play those factions against each other.
That's messed up.
It is. But Green says a strong, unifying culture can help. When everyone feels connected, there's less need to split into factions.
Like a sense of belonging that's bigger than those little divisions.
Yeah. And to wrap things up, Green talks about something more positive, the reality group.
A reality group. That sounds good after all this talk about power struggles and manipulation.
It does, right. A lot of groups, Green says, they get stuck in these bad patterns,
Yeah.
driven by ego and power. They're out of touch with reality. They're in a bubble.
I've definitely seen groups like that.
Yeah. He contrasts those with this idea of a reality group, a group that's focused on getting things done, values honesty, and welcomes different perspectives.
Right.
They're grounded, they're clear-eyed, and they make rational decisions.
So it's like a healthy group, right?
Exactly. And Green gives some ways to create and keep a reality group. Things like having a strong shared purpose, building a competent team with different skills and personalities, encouraging open communication, and even encouraging some healthy conflict.
So not avoiding conflict, but using it to make things better.
Exactly. Green's saying that groups can be powerful, but in a bad way.
Yeah.
Or in a good way.
Right.
It depends on the dynamics, understanding the patterns, and how we choose to participate.
Wow, this has been a really insightful deep dive. Green's ideas, they really give you a new way of looking at how groups work, the good and the bad.
It does, doesn't it? And the first step is awareness. Once we understand these patterns, we can make better choices about how we interact in groups, how we influence people, and how to protect ourselves from being manipulated.
Right. It's about understanding the game so we can play it strategically and ethically in a way that's good for us and the groups we're in.
And remember, being aware of this stuff, it empowers you to, resist that downward pull, to think for yourself, and to contribute to a more positive group experience.
So to our listener, as you go through the groups in your own life, at work, with your friends, even your family, keep these ideas in mind. Ask yourself, what's the culture here? What are the unwritten rules? Who are the key players? Am I helping to make this group better?
Just remember, understanding human nature gives you the power to navigate groups better. To make better choices and to be a more influential and impactful person.
Until next time, keep diving deep.